Hello friends and welcome back. This is Jennifer McGuire. So I enjoy making handmade gifts for the holidays, and one of the things I like to make the most is paper ornaments. Well, I also am always trying to come up with new ways to incorporate these paper ornaments onto cards so that I can easily mail them. Well, today I've got a bunch of examples, not only of ornaments themselves, but different ways to incorporate them onto a card. Now, I am using lots of different layering dies today and a few others, but keep in mind that you could make these from different shaped dies, maybe background dies that you cut into shapes, or even stamped images that you cut out. The key is to stack several layers of paper together so that it's sturdy enough to be an ornament. So I'll show lots of ornaments, but also ways to incorporate them into cards. Now, this first example is a little different from the rest. The ornament is actually the card itself. You can open it up to see the sentiment. For this one, I used the Birch Press Aurora layering dies. Now, there are 3 dies in this set, but you could definitely use them separately. But when you use them together, you get a gorgeous layered look. I'm also using the Memory Box Mod Poinsettias die set. Those are the 3 dies on the bottom, and I'm actually using those to create leaves to go on my flower or my poinsettia that I'm creating. What I like to do is choose my cardstock scraps and put them together with the die, so I know which colors I'm going to layer together. Now for this, I'm using my Gemini Junior die cut machine. You could use any die cut machine with these. However, I find that the Gemini Junior is the best die cutting machine for cutting intricate dies. You can use a shim with other die cut machines and these dies will work great. However, this Gemini Junior is the one that I reach for most often. So for the first layer, I die cut from some Simon Says Stamp glitter cardstock, and you can see how wonderfully it die cut and all the great detail you get. Now for the other pieces, I just used regular cardstock that I had on hand, and I tried to use lots of scraps for these. These paper ornaments are great for using up those scraps. I also like to die cut multiple things at once. So I have 3 dies on here with 3 pieces of paper, so I can save a lot of time. I will end up with lots of little bits left over, which I can either vacuum up with my Handvac, which is my favorite tool in my craft room, or I can save them for another project. So I went ahead and did all of my die cutting, and now you can see how beautifully each of the die cuts layer together. I made sure that each die was cut from a different color cardstock, just to add to that dimensional feel. So I die cut each die from red cardstocks and from gold cardstocks, so that I could interchange the center. So I'm going to end up with a red flower with a gold center, but keep in mind I have all those leftover pieces, like these red centers that I'm not using, that I can use to create another flower or card. I like when I have leftover pieces so I can make 2 cards at once. Now there are a few ways to adhere these intricate die cuts together, and I'll show you a couple in this video. The first way I wanted to show you is with the strong liquid adhesive. I really like the Gina Connect glue. Now normally on a card I would only use a little drop here and there, and that would hold it fine. But today I'm using more because this is going to be an ornament that I want to last for years to come, and it might be thrown in a box, so I want to make sure that it holds tight. So I just press that together, put a little pressure on it for a minute, and then it dries completely. Then I can go ahead and keep adding the layers together. Now you could use spray adhesive for this. I'm not going to show that in this video. I'm not a big fan of spray adhesive, but if you wanted to save time, that is one option that you can do also. I do like to use the liquid adhesive because I can do a bunch of die cutting, then take the pieces with me on the go along with a little bottle of glue, or I can watch a movie as I glue them together. Okay, so I wanted to make this an ornament, something that you can open up and see a message inside. So it's actually a card in and of itself. So I wanted to put a solid area behind this. So I die cut a large dark red circle, and I'm gluing it to the back of the flower. And I'll add the gold center right into place. Now there's a little bit of the circle peeking out between the petals, so I'm just cutting little notches into them, just cutting little V's out so you don't see the circle around the edge, but you could skip that if you wanted to. I also die cut from that poinsettia die set some leaves, so I created it from green cardstock, and I'm gluing that to the back of our flower. Now I want to hide where that is adhered, so I'm going to add one more circle into the center. There are many layers to this particular ornament, but this is a gift in and of itself, and I'm thinking that this is what I'm going to make for teachers and the admin at my daughter's school this year. Okay, so I created 2 flowers like that. Exactly the same, I just put leaves on one of them. I have glued and stacked together 3-piece white die cuts, and I'm adding that to both of the flowers. I need a way for the recipient to hang this on their tree, so I'm punching a small hole at the top of both of the flowers, and then I'll put a ribbon through the 2 holes to connect them. You could use any small ribbons, baker twine, or string that you may have on hand. Okay, so let's look at the finished product here. I ended up adding a white die cut circle to the inside to write the message from my family. But you can see how this would hang nicely on a tree and also kind of acts like a card. It's about 4 inches by 4 inches, so I have a 4¼ inch square envelope that I mail this in, but you could mail it in a regular A2 envelope. On the flap of my envelope, I stamped the Gina K Music Medley stamp with gold ink, which I'll show you later in this video. And so this first example shows how you can create an ornament that is actually the card itself, but the person can keep it forever and hang it on their tree each year. Now before I get into the examples where there are ornaments attached to cards, I wanted to show you one more stand-alone ornament. With this one, I did a lot of layering, so I used a different method to adhere the layers together. This one is extra thick, and I have a fun finishing touch to show you. This time I used a different Birch press layering die set, but keep in mind you can again use dies that you may have, or the same one for all of these examples. This time I'm using Stick It double-sided adhesive sheets. This is a very thin double-sided adhesive. I like to put it on the back of my cardstock before I die cut. That way my die cuts have the adhesive on them and are ready to adhere together. Since I'm using so many layers on this example, this was a big time saver for me. But keep in mind it may be more cost effective to use a liquid adhesive, so it just depends on how many you're making and how intricate they are. I find that my die cut machine cuts through the cardstock and the adhesive with no problem, but if you need to, you can run it through twice just to be sure. Okay, so now I have tons of layers that I die cut, and they all have adhesive on them already. So now all I have to do is peel off the release paper and layer them together. I die cut 2 large white circles that I'll be assembling these pieces on. The 2 circles will look exactly the same so that I can have a front and a back to this ornament. If you want to save time, you can only do the front and leave the back plain, or you can write a message there or even add a photo. But for this one, I wanted the front and the back to be the same. And by the way, with the Stick It double-sided adhesive, you need to add pressure to make sure it stays after you put it in place. So I just rub my bone folder over it, but you could use anything to add pressure. I then die cut 6 extra white circles. I'm going to glue all of these together. This time I'm using liquid adhesive since they aren't intricate, and that'll save me time. Now I'm gluing this stack of white circles between my 2 ornament sides. This will make my ornament super thick. It'll be nice and heavy and durable. Now you may notice the side doesn't look very finished, so here's a fun trick. I just rub some liquid adhesive along the side, and then I have some gray velvet ribbon. It's just something I had in my stash. Any ribbon would work. And I'm just adding that around the outside edge of my ornament. It gives it a beautiful finished touch. I also add a loop of silver string, and that will be what allows you to hang this ornament onto your tree. So if you don't have a ribbon that's the right size for wrapping around the side of an ornament, you can also cut a thin strip of cardstock and have that wrap around the ornament for the finished look. I wanted to add the word wish to the center of the ornament, so I used the Memory Box Jotted Wishing dies. In this die set, you have the word wishing and the shadow die included. I die cut the shadow from vellum and the word wishing from white cardstock. And I'm actually cutting off the ing, so I have the word wish alone. This is a great way to get more out of your word dies. So I'm adding my white die cut onto the vellum, and then I'll stack 3 more white wish die cuts on top so that it has some dimension, and then the last layer I'll add some silver glitter cardstock. Now this one does have many layers to it, and you could skip those layers if you want to. I just wanted to make something that was nice and thick and would be a great ornament to last for a long time. I plan to tie this one onto a gift just to make it extra special. If I did mail this one, I would definitely use a padded envelope. Okay, now that I've created a couple of paper ornaments that are standalone, let's create some ornaments that you can incorporate onto a card. Now this one features the Birch Press Radiant Ornament die set. Now this die set is one that I've used before, and I'll link to that up here on the top right corner if you want to check it out. There are the 3 layering dies that can be used separately, and then also there is an ornament topper die that I'm cutting from silver mirror cardstock. I already have created some cardstock pieces that I've covered with Stick-It double-sided adhesive, so this will be really fast to assemble. I'm only doing the 3 layers, and then I'll do a solid back to this ornament. This will save time and keep the card from being too bulky. To create this thinner ornament, I'm starting with the most solid die layer first and adhering that on to cardstock. Now I will use my bone folder to press all of that adhesive in place. Stick-It adhesive is movable or removable or whatever you want to call it until you press it down, so be sure to do that. Now I'm adding the second layer, then I'll add the third layer. Once I'm done, I will use my scissors to cut out around the edge of the ornament. This is a pretty basic shape, so it's easy to do. Now it's time to create the card for our ornament. I have a piece of blue cardstock that I'm putting in my Sunny Studio Dapper Diamonds embossing folder. I will then run this through my Gemini Junior. You can use any die cut machine for these, and this will make a great impression on the cardstock. You can either use the front or the back. I actually used it on my note card so that the diamonds are the raised part. I'm adding this to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch note card. I do recommend using a note card base that is heavy weight so that the weight of the ornament isn't a problem. I used Nina Classic Crest Solar White in 110 pound. That's my favorite card base weight, and I'll link to that below. Now I've added a silver string to the top of my ornament, and I noticed that the knot on the string likes to come undone, so I'm just rubbing a little bit of liquid adhesive on the knot so that it stays put. I also added a layered Believe die cut to the center of the ornament, and I added that silver die cut ornament topper. Now for this card, I decided to add the ornament in the easiest way, and that is just to put a little piece of washi tape on the back of the card to hold the string in place. This way the ornament swings around and the recipient knows that it can be easily removed and kept. I've mailed many ornament cards like this in the past, and it's always worked out very well. Now you may notice a little bit of shimmer on my paper ornament. That's because I sprayed it with the Tsukineko Shimmer Spritz. This offers such a beautiful subtle shine, and it really makes these paper ornaments come to life. You could use any glitter spray that you want. And by the way, you may notice that on my matching envelope, I have stamped on the flap. The stamp that I use for that is a great holiday background stamp. That's the Memory Box Typewriter Holiday Element Stamp Set. This one has the words to The Night Before Christmas, and it has some other words that you can use on your cards as sentiments. So you'll see this background stamp used throughout this video. So this card shows how you can add your ornament very easily with a little piece of washi tape on the back of the card. Now my next example shows holding your ornament onto a card with a strip of vellum. This is also easy to do and gives you a spot to add a sentiment. Now this ornament actually has some see-through parts to it, and I added gems for some extra sparkle. For this one, I used the Birch Press Trina layering dies. Again, there are 3 dies in the set. All of these could be used alone or together. And the center does cut out, so you can use those parts separately or together. And you can actually interchange the different centers from all the different die sets that I show you today, or at least from most of them. For this one, I did put Stick-It double-sided adhesive on the back of my cardstock before I did the die cutting, so these are very quick and easy to layer together. I layered one set together and then did another set to go on the back of the card. I'm also layering the center parts, but if you wanted to, you could just use the outside part as a frame or the inside part alone as a small ornament. But I'll be using them together in this video, and this set is just gorgeous. For this ornament, I wanted some areas to be see-through, but I wanted the center to be solid. So I die cut some solid circles. I die cut 2 of them that are the same size as the centered layer piece. I glued a solid piece to the back of both of our centered layer pieces, and then I glued them back to back, so the back of the ornament looks just like the front of the ornament. Now I did the same with the layered frame that you see at the top left. I have 2 layered frames and I'm going to glue them back to back. That way, if the ornament turns around, it looks the exact same. I'm putting strong liquid adhesive around the outside edge of the center, and then I'll press it into the frame. But keep in mind that frame is beautiful as is, and you could even put a photo in the center and make an ornament that way. While this dries, let's create the vellum strip that will hold the ornament onto our card. I have a Birch Press Merry and Christmas sugar script die cut that I'm gluing onto vellum, and then I will trim it down to a vellum strip. You could also instead white heat emboss a sentiment on this strip. I'm adding string to the top of our ornament, and I also did add some gems to both sides of this ornament so that it would have some sparkle. I have a 5" by 5" square note card and a piece of white cardstock that is cut slightly smaller. On the back of the white cardstock, I'm putting lots of strong double-sided adhesive. That way, when I wrap the vellum around this, it'll stay put. So I'm removing the release paper from the 2 sides of the white square. I will hold my ornament on the front of it and make sure that it's centered. I'll then wrap the vellum strip around and press that folded vellum onto the exposed adhesive on the back. If you wanted to, you could use a ruler and a pencil to make sure you have this centered, but I'm just eyeballing it in this case, and it seemed to work out okay. I find it best to hold the ornament in place when you wrap the vellum around so that the vellum isn't too tight. It needs a little bit of space there so you can tuck the ornament behind it when you're done. So now I'm adding this to the front of my note card, and we can simply slide the ornament behind the vellum. I will again use a piece of washi to tape the ends of the ribbon to the back of the card, just so it looks nice, but you could leave it if you wanted to. Now with this design, the ornament doesn't move too much on the front. It doesn't swing around. It wiggles a bit so the recipient will know that they can remove it, or you can write a note on the inside. Now I did take some time to add some gems to this ornament, and I really think it brings it to life and adds a lot of sparkle, but you could just stick with the layered paper if you wanted to. And by the way, one of the greatest things about creating these paper ornament cards is you put most of your effort into the ornament itself, so the rest of the card can remain simple. Okay, here's another example of using a vellum strip to hold your ornament in place. In this case, I have a much smaller ornament that I created using glitter cardstock. And I'll use the remainder of those die cuts to create this example. So I'll show you both at once. For this, I use Simon Says Stamp glitter cardstock once again. It die cuts beautifully. And this set of Birch Press layering snowflake dies. Now these snowflake dies actually cut the circle shape, but then you can also see it cuts like a snowflake shape at the center. So you can use all the pieces together or create multiple cards like I'm doing here. After I did all of my die cutting, I'm gluing the layers together with my Gina K Connect glue. I find that liquid adhesive works better with the glitter cardstock, but you could definitely use the stick-it adhesive if you wanted to. Now this entire ornament is made up of glitter paper. Even the white is glitter paper, so there's lots of shine to it. I used the centers of the die cuts to create a small ornament, so I'm making 2 at once. For the smaller ornament, I have the same thing on the front and the back, so it's reversible. With the larger ornament, I just put a large white glitter cardstock circle on the back. So it's only fancy on the front, but that's a great way to save time and bulk. Okay, let's start with the small ornament card first. On the background of this one, I used the Avery Elle Hatch Matte die. This is an awesome background die. It cuts a piece that is 4 by 5 1/4 and also has these decorative diagonal lines that I think are great for adding interest to a simple card. I'll be using a thin strip of vellum to hold our ornament in place. On that vellum, I'm white heat embossing this glad tidings of joy sentiment from the Concord and Ninth Holiday Cheer Tag Stamp Set. I've used this one in a video before too, and I'll link to that video on the top right. Now, to make sure that the ornament doesn't move as I'm trying to wrap my vellum around it, I just taped it with some temporary tape, and that helps to hold it in place as I wrap the vellum and fold it around the sides. Once I have that there, I'll add adhesive to the back and glue that onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card. In my last example, I put the adhesive on the back first. In this example, I'm putting the adhesive on the back second. Whichever way works for you, it doesn't matter. Just make sure you're securing that vellum in place. Now I can add my layered die cut ornament behind the vellum and fold the string over the top and hold it there with a piece of washi tape. Now I think this card design would work great with a stamped and die cut image too. Just stamp and die cut the image, then die cut a bunch of extra white die cuts. Glue it to the back to give it a little bit of thickness so it works as an ornament. Punch a hole at the top and add a string. And that way you can even use your stamped images for paper ornaments. I'm using all intricate dies today to create these ornaments simply because I love die cutting. But keep in mind you can use your stamps and coordinating dies to make paper ornaments too. Now remember, we still have that large glitter ornament to use. This time I'm going to show you a different way to add it to the front of a note card. I've created a note card here and added some stamping. We have my finished glitter ornament that has a solid piece on the back and all the fancy layering on the front, along with some gems. I'm adding some string to the top of it, but this time the way I'm going to add this ornament to the card is to cut 2 small slits on the top front of the card. Into these slits, I can tuck the string of the ornament. That way it kind of hangs on the front of the card and still can be easily removed. These slits are very tiny, only about 1/8 of an inch deep, so they're not that noticeable. But check out how you can tuck the 2 strings into the 2 small slits, and it looks great on the front of the card. Now this ornament will swing around a little bit, but that's okay. That's a great way for the recipient to know that it is removable. You can either leave the string hanging on the inside or fold it down and add a little piece of washi there. Now for the matching 6x6 envelope, I added the same stamped background onto the flap of the envelope. And that's that memory box background stamp that I showed you earlier. So there you have another way to hold your ornament onto your card, and that's with those 2 small slits on the front. Okay, let's do another card example. This shows yet another way to add your ornament to your card, and that's with some clear thread. Let's start out by making the ornament. I used another Birch Press layering die set. A lot of these die sets are great because they're not just holiday themed, they can be used all year round. This time I'm die cutting from some mirror cardstock. That way when I die cut and assemble, the ornament actually looks like it's metal, not paper, which is really fun. Another way you can get this look is by covering your finished ornament with embossing powder. I didn't do that in this video, but the other layering video that I linked to up here does show that option. So I started by layering the frame pieces, and I put a white die cut circle behind it. I want to add the center to this, but I want it to have a lot of dimension. So I die cut a bunch of white circles of the same size, glued it behind the layered center, and now I'm adding that into the center of the ornament. By doing this, my ornament has even more dimension because the center sticks out a little. Next, I added a stacked joy die cut to the center, and I added string to the top of the ornament. I created a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 inch purple note card, and I'm taping the ornament into the center temporarily. This is just to hold it in place while we do some stitching. I have a needle with some clear thread, and I'll link to the clear thread I use. I'm poking 2 holes on each side of the ornament, one through a hole in the ornament and one next to the ornament. I'm going to weave in and out of the ornament through the front of the card. This clear thread will hold the ornament in place, and it's not noticeable at all. So by doing 1 stitch on each side, I can be sure that it stays put and stays in the center on the front of the card. If you don't have clear thread, you could just use a white thread and it probably wouldn't be noticeable either. Now I'm taking my two ends and tying them into a knot on the inside of the card. I will then write cut and draw a little arrow so the recipient knows to cut that clear string, and then they can remove the ornament on the front. Now with this design option, the ornament stays put the most. There's no wiggling, there's no swinging around. So if you want to be sure it stays on the center, this is a good option for you. It doesn't take that long, and most of us have a needle and thread on hand. So here's a look at the final card. You can see how beautiful that mirror cardstock turns out. It really makes the ornament look like a metal ornament instead of paper. And that mirror cardstock isn't too expensive. But remember, you can get a similar look by using embossing powder on top of your layered ornament. Okay, I have one more example for you, and with this one I wanted to show you that you don't need layering dies to create paper ornaments. With this one, I just used a window die cut. I started by stacking together 4 white die cuts that I created with the Memory Box Pine Candle Oval Frame die. On the top layer, I'm adding some coloring to the pine and the candle with Copic markers, but you could use any kind of coloring here. I then die cut the same die from gold glitter cardstock. I cut away the inside and just used the oval frame to go on the front of our white stacked die cut. That way it has coloring in the center, and then it has the gold around the frame. Remember, this part that I cut out, I can save for another card. Now you could leave this open and just tie a ribbon at the top and turn it into an ornament. But I decided I wanted some shimmer vellum on the back of it. I thought that would be pretty when the lights are on in the tree. So I covered the back with some shimmer vellum and trimmed off the excess. And then I cut a couple more of the oval frames to put on top of that for a finished look. Now for the card itself, I used the Gina Music Medley stamp and Delicata Golden Glitz ink. This is a beautiful gold ink, and I stamped that onto a panel that'll go on our card, and I stamped it on our envelope. Here you can see how pretty that background is. It's subtle but has some shimmer to it. Now to hold the ornament onto the card, I'm going to do the technique again where I cut 2 small slits at the top of the card and tuck the ribbon ends into it. So here you can see the final card. We have lots of shimmer thanks to that gold glitter paper. We also used that gold glitz ink on the background, and I used it on my matching envelope. And by the way, I did add a red glitter die cut using the Memory Box Jotted piece dies. So this shows you that you really can use different dies to create these paper ornaments. You just want to make sure you stack some together so it's a little bit thicker. I encourage you to look through your die stash and see if you have anything you might be able to use to create a paper ornament. I really hope this video inspires you to give these ornaments a try and how to incorporate them on a card. I do list all the supplies that I use below in my YouTube description. I also link to a couple other videos in the center that you might like. Thanks for spending another long half hour with me. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you soon.